Welcome to the Good Book Club, everybody. This is our October edition. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're already to October, and we have a book for you that is just so exciting. I can't believe the timing of this book, given that we just had General Conference where this topic was brought up quite a bit, and we are absolutely thrilled, and we have a wonderful presenter, Mark, so this is going to be just great. We'll start out by reading our mission statement, and I'll just do that since I'm already spot lit, right? Let's make it easy. So this is our Good Book Club mission statement that we share at the beginning of each of our meetings to kind of remind us what our goals are and our purpose. It says, the Good Book Club was created to bring together nuanced and post-Mormons and others with a shared interest in Mormonism. We are introspective, critical thinkers seeking to learn, connect, and build relationships through the catalyst of literature. We welcome all who are searching for a safe space to share authentic thoughts, feelings, and ideas through open dialogue and shared experiences relevant to Mormon culture. As we deconstruct previous, my chat came up. As we deconstruct previous beliefs, we encourage all to find happiness in the process of discovering new religious ideologies, spirituality, and life philosophies. We've had this mission statement for, I think, about 4 years, almost since the very beginning. And it's exactly what I think we've really accomplished what we set out to accomplish. So we welcome anybody that's new too. And this is awesome. We hope you'll stay. All right, we're going to run through a few little housekeeping slides at the beginning, and then we'll jump right into our presentation. We don't have too many this month. So we want to remind everybody that our new season started in September. We go September to August, kind of like the school year, maybe, I guess. And so we've already covered 2 books. We have some amazing books coming up. You can access this list on our Facebook page. And if you only communicate with us through email, I usually send it out with each of my communications. If you want to go to the next slide, you can read some of the books here, and we might put that in the chat. I know Bruce had that before. As we go through, you can just kind of get an idea of what's coming up. You can go to the next slide there. Now we do have discussion leaders, people that have volunteered to lead the discussion, like Mark today, kind of facilitate the conversation. There is one last book left that does not have a discussion leader, and this is June 8th. This is going to be in the summer. The title is Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End. This was highly recommended. A lot of you suggested this. I think this was actually the highest voted on book. So I know it's summer vacation, but if you would like to volunteer to be a discussion leader, you can throw that into the chat, or you can email me at thegoodbookclub@mail.com. And if you're new, being a discussion leader just means that you kind of maybe throw some slides together, or you're just kind of a discussion leader. You can do as little or as much as you want. You could do as little as saying, what'd y'all think? Or you can put together a slide presentation to help us guide us through the conversation. So anyway, if you're interested, especially maybe if you've read the book before and you'd like to talk about it with a group, just let me know. And that is needed on June 8th. So, all right, our next book coming up in November. I am so excited about this. Britt Hartley, the wonderful Britt Hartley, No Nonsense Spirituality. This is a brand new book. Now, I had told everybody there's no audio, but that's not true. There is audio. It's on the book's website. So there is a way to get an audio book. So you're going to want to grab that, probably a hard copy and the audio. This is amazing. We've interviewed Britt before. We've had her, we've been to conferences where she speaks. I might even ask her if she's available just to pop in for a minute to see if she could come talk to us in the book club. I think I will do that. But our discussion leader, again, is the amazing Kendall Christensen. He actually grabbed 2 books this time, so we get to hear from him quite a bit, but he does an incredible job. So you can plan to join us for that on Sunday, November 10th at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. It's going to be really fun. And I think we don't really have any more announcements this time. It's kind of a light week. Sometimes we go on for like half an hour, don't we? But in this case, we're going to jump straight to our book. We have Armageddon, What the Bible Really Says About the End by the amazing Bart Ehrman. And our discussion leader is Mark Denier, coming all the way to us from Belgium, I believe. So this is going to be wonderful. We're going to turn it all over to Mark now.
All right. So I'll have to share my screen with you. Let's see. Go back here. All right.
All in Dutch.
Well, yes. My native language is Flemish, which is similar to Dutch. And so if I make any mistakes in English, have mercy on me, please. So, can you see my screen?
Yeah, but you're not in presentation mode right now, Mark.
Oh, okay. Let's see. All
There
right.
you
go. Okay. Well, I think it's always good that we know a little bit about the writer, because no matter how objective a writer tries to be, he will always be influenced by what he believes or does not believe. So Bart Ehrman has written a lot of books. He was an evangelical Christian, brought up as an Episcopalian, but after his studies, he kind of turned another way. And I've read many of his books, and he has become, he names himself an agnostic atheist. He believes in a historical Jesus, but he does not believe that Jesus was the Son of God, or he does not believe that he was resurrected. Okay. Now, if you have any questions or remarks, feel free to do so.
I think Martine, Martine, are you on? Martine got to take a cruise with Bart Ehrman. I mean, Bart Ehrman is like the premier Bible scholar out there. He comes up at just about anything that you look at. But Martine got to spend like a week, wasn't it, Martine, with Bart Ehrman?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Now it was 2 weeks, and it was not a cruise. It was an island hopping trip.
Oh, okay. Sounds just as nice.
Can we go to grid, Bruce, so that we can see? There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, what an experience, Martine. Wow.
It was. And I will also say I am also from Belgium. So Mark.
Yes, we're Facebook friends.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Well, Martine, can you say something about Bart Ehrman? What kind of impression did he make on you?
We booked the trip in like early February, and as it got closer to June, I started getting nervous that maybe it wasn't going to be all that we expected, and maybe he wasn't going to be that accessible. And the absolute opposite was the case. Bart Ehrman is an amazing human being. Mm-hmm. He was just part of the group. He was not our guide. He gave 4 lectures, but he was with us breakfast, lunch, dinner, all day long on the bus, in archaeological sites. You could start, if you saw my post while we were there, you could start a conversation with Bart anywhere. And he really is an amazing human being. Very, very accessible.
Martine, didn't you got to talk to him about Mormonism a little bit, didn't you?
Yes, our group was only about 24 people, mostly couples. And as it became known that I'm a former Mormon and Stuart is of the Smith family, we got a lot of questions from everybody who wanted to talk to us. How did we get into it, and how did we get out of it? Bart has had a number of BYU graduates as in his graduate program, and he knows quite a bit, but not as much as I expected he did, because I know at least one of his graduate students from about 15 years ago, actually, and we were able to talk about this person. But we did enlighten him on a lot of things about Mormonism that he wasn't aware of. So it was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun, and it was 2 weeks, so it was quite relaxed.
Yes, I kind of expected that he would put some things of Mormonism in his book, but I can understand that apparently he didn't know that much. So I did it in his place. I put some things in there. All right. Well, thanks, Martine.
Sure.
Now, I'm going to show you a little bit what the Jezreel Valley is like, because that is actually where the Battle of Armageddon would take place. So I'll start the video. At least I hope it works. Okay.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gospel and Spade. Today we will have a brief overview of the geography and notable features of the Jezreel Valley within Israel. The Jezreel Valley is surrounded by the mountain range of Carmel to the west, Lower Galilee to the north, the Jordan Rift Valley to the east, and the hill country of Manasseh to the south. This 30-mile long, roughly arrow-shaped valley is named after the ancient Israelite city of Jezreel, which is found at its eastern end. This city was, during the time of the northern kingdom of Israel, the site of a royal winter palace for King Ahab and his royal dynasty. The valley is also called in Hebrew Har Megiddo, or the Mountain of Megiddo, which in its Greek form is translated as Armageddon. Megiddo.
I'll stop it there. So, as you can hear, and I was there many years ago and stood on that hill, and it's really a spectacular view. There have been a lot of battles in that valley. I have a book where it says there were about 35 battles, big battles. And so there could be millions of soldiers in that valley. And so let's see. Gonna close this. Oops, that's different. Wait a minute. Lost my thing here. Sorry, I'm not very good at this. Okay, here we go. So now we're going to talk about the rapture. Now, Christians throughout most of the first 1900 years of the church, they didn't think of something like rapture. Besides, you can't find that word in the Bible. And John Nelson Darby came up with the idea in the early 1800s. In 1 Thessalonians, Paul talks about the rapture, and it comes from the word rapturo, which, taken from the Latin translation, rapturo translates, I can't really see it here, just a moment, whoops, going too fast, caught up or snatched, they all sometimes say. And you can read that in 1 Thessalonians in 4:17. Now, what happens when evangelists and other religions like Jehovah's Witnesses, they believed that that was something that would happen before the coming of Christ. Namely, that the good ones would be taken up in the sky and would meet Christ there, so that they would not have to stand the 7 years of tribulation and the earth would be punished with. And so the saints, the people who were good, were Christians, would not have to go through that. Now I have a kind of a little movie, well, just a little clip.
Many have wondered not only about the when of the rapture, but also about the how. This is how it will happen. You will not have to do anything except to be ready and expectant. When the time comes for the rapture, God's angels will have a crucial role of gathering his elect from the four corners of the earth. These angels will come from all directions, the north, south, east, and west, to gather those who belong to Christ. Whether alive or dead, no believer will be left behind. Matthew 24, verse 31. They will be caught up together to meet the Lord in the air. You and I will be brought safely into his presence. Will you be ready to meet the King? Type, I will be ready. Many have wondered not only about the when of the rapture, but also about the how. This is how it will happen. You will not.
Oops, that's something else.
Why
Okay.
are you not a Christian?
All right. Well, why do I always get Bart Ehrman? Okay. So, yeah, you're all still there, I see. So you haven't been taken up. But that's something that Bart Ehrman talks about a lot also, because different groups of people, especially evangelists, they believe that would happen. And they all made some calculations when that would be. You can find that in the book. I'm sure you read something of that. And so there were several people who, yeah, who said they knew the date when Christ would come back. And even people were so sure about that they sold their house or their farm, and they were ready to be taken up into the air, into the sky to meet Jesus. Of course, it didn't happen. Now, I don't know, have any of you been taught that in the church that there would be a rapture? Because I don't know if it's so familiar to Mormonism. We talked a little bit about it in church, but I don't know if, like in America, they talked a lot about that. Yes, Landon?
Yeah, I was kind of mixed as I read this, because I know as missionaries we'd always say, "Oh yeah, when Jesus comes back, we're all going to be caught up into the air." And I know that I've seen artwork where LDS artwork where we're shown meeting Jesus, but it's really an evangelical doctrine, I guess. I don't know that I've ever had a lesson on the rapture or anything like that, just that we'd be caught up. So it was very interesting for me to hear Bart Ehrman talk about how, there was no rapture ever, and that being caught up in the air really meant just like when a king comes and visits, someone would be caught up to welcome him back, and that the intent was for him to come down, not for us to all go up. And so I found that pretty interesting, but I can't remember ever having a lesson on the rapture in Mormonism, but I definitely know that I've seen pictures, and I've had discussions as missionaries. Oh, we're going to be caught up one day. So I think the underlying is there. Maybe we stole it from evangelicals, but I don't know that we ever had a lesson, or I've ever heard a general conference talk on the rapture.
Okay, Rebecca?
Yeah, I had a friend growing up who was evangelical, and that's, the first I learned about this concept of an actual, going upward to heaven. And I remember thinking, well, that's just crazy. But then as I got older, I thought, well, there's a lot in Mormonism that is similar to that. I think we have views that we will be protected, the righteous will be protected, maybe enveloped by God, nothing is going to happen to us. So there is that idea that we'll be set apart in these trying times, but definitely not the idea that you're going to fly up into the ceiling. I mean, I never realized how seriously they actually took it, where you can have a hatch installed in your ceiling, a rapture hatch. This is the real thing, where you can get out, because, what if you're just bumping the ceiling? I mean, they take this so seriously. One of the funniest things, maybe not funny, I mean, I love animals, and I've talked about this before, but there's actually a company where you can have a friendly atheist come in and get your pet when you're raptured, because your pet isn't going to be raptured. You're going to be gone. Your pet's alone, and you sign up for this service. Oh my gosh, what a great business idea. And they send you emails, I think once a week. And if you don't respond 3 times, then a friendly atheist will show up at your house and rescue your pets. So it's a great concept, and it's a great money-making concept too, because this is a belief. It's a literal belief, but I can't believe in a God that wouldn't take the pets too. That's a problem for me, but some people really believe in it. So interesting. But I think Mormonism, I mean, if you paid attention to the last conference just last weekend, there was a lot of rhetoric, the end of the world, get ready. It's coming. It's going to happen. You're going to be okay if you do what's right. This is baked into Mormonism, and they're hitting it harder and harder, I think, as they're losing converts and kind of losing their grasp.
Okay. Thanks. Steph?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to mention that when I was leaving Mormonism, my best friend has left Catholicism. And that's when I learned about rapture. So I came from the Mormon lens that I was more afraid of, the signs of the times and, the Armageddon and, not being burned as stubble. And she recalled that when she was at church, they showed them a video describing the rapture. And she said it traumatized her because it was literally, a mom and a dad and children all holding hands walking down the street. And suddenly the parents just disappear and they were taken up in the rapture and the children are just left there. And so it was this similar trauma of, fear mongering to keep you obedient to a church, basically. So that's all.
Yes. Yes. And the surprise, Bruce?
Well, that whole fear mongering thing, I think, was just hit on at the last conference. I think they're sensing, that people are leaving and fewer people are coming in. And so then they have to say, okay, we have a hard date. You have to do what we say, give us your money. And if you look on Google end of time predictions, it brings up a wiki page that has hundreds, and it goes through each denomination's end of the world, and then talks a little bit about how, when that date passed, then they had to reframe it, and they had to say, okay, well, you weren't righteous enough, or we're doing something wrong. So yeah, kind of interesting.
Okay. Now, surprisingly, you could say, there were people that wrote books about it, and they said it's going to be that date, and everybody was ready, and it didn't happen. You would think, you say, "Oh, I've been fooled," or this is a fraud. But often it happens that people still keep believing the person who wrote that book or said that, and often, of course, they will write a new book and say, "Well, I forgot it. There was no year zero, so it must be next year." And they have all sorts of explications for that. Yes, Bruce.
Didn't we have that in Mormon culture with Julie Rowe and her followers? People were getting these big tents, and some of them were selling their house or cashing in their retirements. And I believe it was October 2 or 3 years ago. What was the date? And that's come and gone. And then the church formally distanced themselves from her because my understanding she was using stake centers to have her meetings, and then her relationship with Chad Daybell, and that gets into the whole Lori Vallow Chad Daybell problem, which is also the Tom Harrison Visions of Glory problem that gets with Jody Hildebrand, Ruby Franke thing. I mean, these things are all kind of related in the Mormon sphere.
Okay. Well, we call it also cognitive dissonance. That means actually that, people try to explain it, or they try to defend it. Often they become more fanatic even, because I can imagine that, let's say you have family who you talked about that, like, I'm going to be taken up, and then it doesn't happen. Well, you look like a fool, I guess. But instead of saying, "Oh yeah, that was wrong," a lot of people try to defend their position and say, "Well, this and that." And I think, if we talk about Mormonism, that happens a lot too. And I have a little personal experience to tell about that. Now, Gordon B. Hinckley, he became president in 1995. And the next year, in 1996, he came to Western Europe, and he gave several talks. And this is a pamphlet which was made by our mission president at the time, and it was called The Promise. And it was for the whole of Western Europe. And he said, again. Oh. He said in June 1996 that he believed that we could double the membership of the church in 5 years. You know, he said, I really believe that if you would work, pray and work and concentrate on it and doing everything possible. Now, we were all excited because the church in Europe didn't grow fast, but to double it in 5 years, that was, yeah, like a miracle. And I was a stake mission president at the time, so I was really involved in that work. And we worked really hard. We did everything we could. And about 6 months before the end of the 5 years, we still hadn't made a lot of progress. But really believing member I said, well, the blessings will probably come in the last months. Maybe we can baptize thousands of people then. That's the kind of faith I had. But then 6 months before the end of the 5 years, I was released as stake mission president because they needed a branch president in my city. So I became a branch president. And I thought, you know, the next stake conference, they're going to motivate the members just to make it. You know, nobody said a word. And I thought, what's going on? And so next time I saw the stake president, I said, well, what's happening? Why didn't you say anything? And he said, well, the mission president said that it was not doubling the membership, but doubling the baptisms. I said, you know, that's not true. He said, yeah, well, but yeah, they told us. And so instead of having faith and trying to continue, they just kind of, you know, said, oh, well, yeah, let's forget about it. And then Elder Beller came and he said, the priesthood has failed. It was our fault. And that's what they often do. If a prophet says something and it doesn't happen, instead of that the prophet would say, sorry, I was wrong. No, it's the fault of the members or some fault of somebody. But it seems like it's never their fault. And yeah, a lot of members had a hard time with that. And I guess some of them left the church because of it, because they had believed so hard in the prophet and it didn't come to pass. But then there were others that said, oh, well, yeah, maybe we should have worked harder. And, you know, they would defend the prophet. And that's a sort of cognitive dissonance also. All right. Well, let's see. This is from a documentary. It's just a trailer.
Instant. At 1/64th of a second, boom. Just like that, everybody who's trusted in Christ as Savior will be caught up together to be with Him in the clouds. If there's only 50 million, will suddenly vanish from this earth, off of elevators, off of escalators, out of offices, and out of cars on freeways and crashes and out of airplanes, the world would be terrorized.
The rapture makes me have to focus because I may meet my maker tomorrow.
You know, there's going to be a last battle. Israel is going to be attacked from the north, from the west, from the east. Jerusalem will become a place of horror for the nations. I mean, it will be a horrible time for the Jews because the anvil on which the human race seems to be crushed is Israel. And then you head south, I believe, to Jerusalem. And I think that's where the battle occurs, not here at Armageddon. A real quick word of prayer before anybody comes up with the international incident. Okay?
Yes.
Lord, we do thank you for your grace, your goodness, that you care about it.
There's no place for that mosque. It has to be removed.
There are pictures that are inside the Alaska Mosque. You can dicker with them.
When people think that they have to possess a place to possess the truth, that turns that spot into the blasting cap of religious conflict.
I kept hoping one of Saddam's missiles would find its way over to the dome. Brown Shiites, for me, much more dangerous than those Texan evangelicals. But together, they may look into something really destructive. They hate us because it's their religious duty to hate us. They hate us because radical Islam is a doctrine of death.
Armageddon theology, this interest in war, seems to have an almost addictive power.
The war in Iraq is a good thing for Christians. The prophetic signs, they're increasing, just like the birth contractions of a woman.
World War III has started.
Well, I don't know what you think about that, but I think it's a bit scary. Bruce?
Yeah, well, this brings up those videos that were released of briefings for the Quorum of the 12, and they had what is it, former Senator Gordon Smith of Oregon talking, and he talked about waiting for instructions from, the church headquarters, and then he talked about supporting the invasion of Iraq because he thought it would enable the church to spread its message in Iraq. And so I think this is an example of that, supporting a war that now, not so sure that it was justified or the right thing to do, but he did it expecting, to spread the gospel. And so I think that happens within the church. I mean, I kept wondering, if Mitt Romney had become president, if the church said, use nuclear weapons around the world, would he have done it? Because he's pledged to, follow the church leaders. I don't know. It's an interesting concept because I think it can be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Landon? You're muted.
Yeah. I was that was one of the scary parts in the book to me was, one thing is when people start believing prophecies, they start trying to make them happen. And the very creation of Israel, I think in the 1940s was a result of everyone, the Western world saying, oh, Israel has to exist in order for Jesus to come back because that's part of the plan. And therefore, we've got to create a homeland for the Jews to return to so that all these things in the Bible can come to pass. And so I think people see this, they read these things, and then they try to make them happen. And I think politicians make that happen a lot. And I think a lot of times we see unwavering support for Israel against its neighbors. And sometimes you say, well, if I was the neighbors and I was treated that way, I think I'd be in conflict too with Israel. And maybe there's a more peaceful, equitable way to solve the problems in the Middle East, but nobody wants to go there because they're all looking at the prophecies, and Israel has to be strong and has to be able to bring all these things in. So they try to keep the others down so that Israel will be strong. And it seems like that there's better ways out there if people would put aside these preconceived notions from a book that was written 2,000 years ago about a battle that was among ancient civilizations and trying to recreate it in the future. I think there's a better way that we could solve it if people would just open their mind to it doesn't have to end the way the Bible says it's going to end. We can be open to other ideas. I think that would be a path forward that won't happen because so many people in the Western world are this result from the Bible come about, and they're going to do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Okay. Rebecca?
I agree, Landon, terrifying. But if you think about this, it's been baked in, especially for people of our age, for a long time. Think of patriarchal blessings. You're the chosen generation. You're saved for the very last days. You were the most valiant. This is in all of people of my age's patriarchal blessings, right? And you see it even in younger generations. Now, I had a seminary teacher who told us, very seriously, very hush hush, in his blessing, he had been told he was going to be one of the prophets laying dead in the street in Jerusalem, or the apostle, prophet, whatever the exact wording is in the prophecy. But that made it very real. It terrified us because we knew our seminary teacher. We trusted him. He at the time was probably in his late 30s, and he was going to be somebody that was going to be laying in the street. So all of us knew that this was going to happen. Would we be able to get married? Would we have children? What was our future? It's so hard to describe to other people that weren't raised in this way what that does to just your thinking. And that's still ongoing because, as Bruce mentioned, and I mentioned in conference this last time, they really dialed up that rhetoric. And I follow a lot of faithful social media sites, and I saw a lot of posts from people, most of them younger, being really concerned about that and asking those same kind of questions. What do you guys think conference meant? Do you think, I'm really worried, I'm not married yet, will I have the chance to get married? I also saw a post from a therapist who had a lot of younger clients, teenagers that were LDS, who came into their therapy session terrified by the rhetoric at conference, taking it absolutely gospel truth, not even to be punny. And so to me, it's extremely irresponsible to say that kind of stuff when you're in a leadership position and you know that people trust you. Because I remember that mindset I had over 40 years ago, wondering, is it going to happen soon? Will I not have the life that I think maybe I can? And here it is happening again. It messes with your psychology, and I find it extremely irresponsible.
Yes. Bruce?
Yeah, as I recall, I think it was Boyd K. Packer I believe it was a conference talk a few years ago, said, we don't know when the second coming is, go about your lives, get your education, have families. And it was kind of backtracking on this narrative that now we've gone back to, the end is coming. But that's because I think they're seeing membership decline and engagement decline. And so they're having to say, oh, yeah, the end is here. You need to do what we say and give us your money. And so I think it goes back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we had a patriarch, and I'm talking about 35 years ago or so, and he told everybody that they were going to meet Christ in this life, and they released him because he had to stop doing that. So, yeah. But if you look at the Bible, it can be inspiring, I guess. It can teach you some lessons, but there's also a danger. If you look what happened with apartheid, with sexism, with slavery, with the Crusades, all the people based their actions on the Bible. They thought the Bible justified those actions, and that can make it dangerous. So, and of course, we'll talk about the book of Revelation in a minute, which is even more dangerous, I would say. Now, there was one lady, she said, well, the dome has to go, the Dome of the Rock. It's a sacred place for Islam, and it's in Jerusalem, and it's on the place where the Temple of Jerusalem should be rebuilt. That's why they won't let people do archaeology there, because they're afraid they would have a tunnel under the dome and blow it up. And but that is not gonna end the conflict between Islam and Christians. It's really dangerous. Now, Russell Nelson, we talked about it. He gave a talk, and he said, Jesus Christ will govern from both Old Jerusalem and New Jerusalem upon the American continent. From these two centers, he will direct the affairs of his church. So here he says again that Jesus will not only come to the Old Jerusalem, but also to the New Jerusalem. And the New Jerusalem, as we know, through the Doctrine and Covenants, the scripture we have, will be in Independence, Jackson County, Missouri. Now, I was kind of expecting Elder Nelson to say to announce 24 temples in Independence, because that's what needs to happen before Jesus comes. So, yeah, I don't know if they're going to buy all the land there to put these temples on, but that's another step that should happen in the Mormon theology before Jesus can come back. So I was kind of surprised that he said that, because lately he said a lot about the old prophets. We shouldn't listen to them anymore. He's the living prophet. But he confirms here that this needs to happen. So, and as Rebecca said, yeah, I think he scared a lot of people by saying, Christ will come back soon and we need to be ready. Of course, that is something I heard 40 years ago too. They kind of stopped doing that, at least in Europe, around the year 2000, because we all thought Jesus would come back around the year 2000. But yeah, when he didn't, they kind of stopped saying that. But I can see that now they're doing that all over again. So scaring people that, they need to be ready and they need to pay their tithing so that they can have their temple recommends and go to one of the many temples. Landon?
I'm not totally read up on New Jerusalem as maybe I should be. I know from an LDS standpoint, the New Jerusalem was always going to be in the American continent. In fact, I've been to the site in Jackson County where it's supposed to be at, but that seems to me to be a very Mormon theory, that the New Jerusalem would be anywhere other than in Jerusalem. My understanding is that Jerusalem was kind of destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans, and that the author of Revelations was writing about Jerusalem after the destruction of the temple, and that he foresaw the New Jerusalem as just being Jerusalem being rebuilt, not a new Jerusalem in a new location. Am I crazy about that? Does any other religion believe in the New Jerusalem being anywhere other than Jerusalem, or is that strictly an LDS philosophy?
That's LDS philosophy, just as like the Garden of Eden is in America. Yes, Bruce.
Yeah. Well, Leonard put in the comments that, what is it, Elder Stevenson, said it'd be after the Olympics. The Olympics are in what? 10
years?
Yeah. And we're like, okay, that's interesting, because all the current leadership will probably be gone by that time. And yeah, it's just interesting that if you say the end's coming, okay, do you cash in your retirement accounts? Do you sell your house? They don't want you to do that. They want you to invest in the Olympics and do all the outreach and all the hosting and stuff like that. So it's kind of a two-edged sword. The end's coming, but no, keep things going. And I think that's kind of a dilemma they've got with this whole thing.
Yeah. Yes, Rebecca.
Sorry, just to Bruce's point. Yeah, they actually covered that, in conference very well, because they mentioned all the things in the next 10 years that were exciting, that were happening. So saying, get ready, be scared, be good, but it probably won't happen until after the Olympics. You're going to have temple open houses. You're going to have the 200th birthday of the Restoration in 2030. You just had President Nelson's birthday, and then you're going to have the Olympics. So there's all these amazing things in which the LDS can get their message out to the world. So keep it on the back burner, keep it in the back of your mind. It's going to happen, but you can do these things first. So I'm not kidding. On Faithful social media, a lot of them are going, whew, okay, we're at least going to make it to the Olympics. We're at least going to have 10 years. But who can live like that, right? I mean, it's still always in the back of your mind. And there was the strangest comment where somebody said, well, you know, the millennium could happen during the Olympics, and you could still compete. Resurrected beings could compete in the Olympics. And there was this whole thread about what would it be like if resurrected beings competed in the Olympics. I mean, these mental gymnastics, they're messing with people's minds, I feel. But if anyone's concerned, we do have until 2034 at least. So plan accordingly.
Maybe mental gymnastics is a new sport.
I feel like it. Well, and I was terrible because I made, for the Mormon newscast, I made some AI of Jesus competing because he would be the ultimate athlete, right? So I put him in, you know, the slalom and the speed skate. It was terrible, but actually kind of funny. So, but again, this is we kind of can be facetious or joke, but this is very real to certain kinds of members of the church who take every word that's said from the pulpit as gospel truth. It's very real. They make life decisions based on what's being said.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Well, this is another text where it talks about the New Jerusalem. I won't read that, but that is something that Joel Smith has done. He has also, they dedicated, a lot in Independence for the building of the temple. I think it's in the hands of the Hedrikites now. Bruce?
Yeah, on a vacation many years ago, we went back and visited all those sites. And another time I took my mom on a church history tour to go through the Nauvoo temple, and we went to Adamon-Diamond, and they were saying, well, here's the altar, but they said they had to keep replacing the rocks because everybody kept taking a rock from Adam's altar home. So the missionaries just kept piling up rocks because the visitors. I guess my understanding, and I saw some movement on this, the church owns a lot of land around Orlando, and with the plan of about a 500,000 person town. And I saw recently where they were trying to annex it into Orlando moving forward. I don't see that same, buying property and doing all this stuff with Independence, Missouri. So it seemed to me like you can see where they're putting their money at is Florida, and and Salt Lake. I mean, every time I go to Salt Lake, I stop by the Apple store because I usually forget something, but in City Creek Mall, and I'm thinking, man, this is a really nice mall and stuff. And so that's where their money seems to go. So it seems to be kind of a mixed message in my view.
They know we're not going to Jackson County because Mormons only gather at Disneyland. So that's why they're going to Orlando.
Yes, I heard they have a ranch in Florida that's as big as Belgium. So, they have a lot of land over there.
And
all right. Well, he talks a little bit about apocalyptic writing. Apocalypse actually means an unveiling, a disclosure. Most of the time, there are visions and dreams in there. It's always about the fight between good and evil, and there will be a lot of casualties, a lot of problems, but eventually the good will win. That's what we have several apocalyptic writings like Enoch, Baruch, Ezra, and so on. Mostly those have been written between 200 before Christ and 200 after Christ. And of course, the book of Revelation is apocalyptic writing. And that's, okay, what we're going to talk about now. Now, I thought an interesting thing is that when John talks about actually apocalyptic writing mostly is anonymous, or they put some name on the writer, which is not really his name. But John talks about being a slave of Christ. But I'll let you talk first, Landon.
You're muted, Landon.
I was just going to say on that previous slide, one of the people that you had listed there was the book of First Enoch. This is something that's coming up big time among the apologists right now. They're saying that there was First Enoch wasn't produced in English until 1820, and that there's no way that Joseph Smith could have had access to First Enoch, and yet many of the prophecies in Moses, where he talks about Enoch, seem to parallel First Enoch very closely. So we actually, there's a guy who wrote a book about that. We actually have coming up on Mormonish. I think tomorrow we're actually interviewing him, and then we'll be putting it out. Who's done a lot of research on First Enoch and stuff. So I just wanted to point out, because anyone who's watching or follows post-Mormon stuff, you'll see a lot of the apologetics coming up with this First Enoch book and his apocalyptic narrative, and that Joseph Smith seemed to have access that he shouldn't have had, which this guy goes through that and shows no, this was well known. It was well known even back in the time Revelations was written. They knew about First Enoch, and Joseph Smith would have had access to it. But just an interesting thing I wanted to bring up, because it is getting a lot of traction right now, where they're saying no one has an answer to how Joseph would have known these things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have those books. They're quite interesting, but of course, yeah, it's a bit like Revelation. And yeah, I was talking about John. He says, I'm in the King James Version, you read that he calls himself a servant of Christ. But the actual word, the Greek word is doulios, and that actually means slave. So he calls himself a slave of Christ. I thought that was interesting. I don't know if any of you have ever felt like you were a slave of Christ, or what you think that means. Bruce?
I felt on my mission I was a slave of the church, but still had no concept about how to process that and being gay and different things, But finally, over 30 more years, I got away and freed myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I must say, sometimes I've been thinking about that, because if we do everything what God or Christ wants from us, then we're good. But if we're not, yeah, then we're not good. And then we have problems. And Jackie, you have a reaction?
Well, I was just thinking that when they say slave of Christ, written in the book of Revelation, owning slaves was a really real thing in Roman times. And, a slave has no freedom. They have to follow the rules, whatever the master says they do. And I think it's interesting that, Mormons just love the whole idea of free agency. But, when they wrote that at the time for Revelations, you had no choice. Like, you were a slave to Jesus Christ. So there was no, leave, come, go. It was serious. This was bonding. This was legal. And it was not to be taken lightly.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And it says here also, he was purchased by God, owned by him, and bound to do what he tells him. And in that sense, he thought he was a slave of Christ. Okay. Well, let's see how the first century people thought of Revelation. And we'll have Bart tell us something about that.
The questioner says, I'm curious if the book of Revelation was more easily understood by its first and second century audience than by a modern audience, or would they have found it equally obtuse? And why was there so much symbolism in this genre? Was it to hide its meaning from the uninitiated?
It's a very good question, and this is a question I deal with in my book, Armageddon. And so I'll say a couple things about it. First, I think the answer is absolutely no. The book was not written in this mysterious way so that the authorities would be puzzled by it. That's an old theory. I had been taught that at one time too, but it's demonstrably wrong. That is not what's going on with this book. In fact, some of the symbolism would have been so obvious to any reader in the Roman Empire that it was just, there was nothing vague about it at all. When you have this beast coming out of the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns, and the 7 heads represent the 10 hills on which this woman is seated, and like this kind of symbolism may seem really weird to people today. But in the ancient world, anybody reading that say, "Oh yeah, that's the city of Rome," and that is what they said. And so it wasn't to hide the meaning. Why is it put in what seems like really mysterious terms? Is because that's how apocalyptic literature works. It's not just the book of Revelation. You find it in the book of Daniel, of course, but you find it outside the New Testament in other Jewish and Christian apocalypses, where you have this wild imagery because the truth is not straightforward. The truth is complicated, and you have to convey it in mystical language. Would the original readers have understood it better? Well, they couldn't have understood it any worse because most people don't have any clue what it's about today. But yeah, I'd say in the ancient world, the original readers had a really pretty good idea what this is about. And we know that many of them did because we have discussions of it, including the first commentary on it in the 2nd century is by a Christian. We have parts of this commentary where it's where the author says that the enemy here is Rome. 666 is Rome. And so he knows that already in the 2nd century. Most people don't know that today.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, as you see, often Christians believe that the book of Revelation is about the future, but it was written for the people in those days, in the 1st century. And we'll have some more things here. What's this? Let's see.
So, my darling YouTube fam, it is I.
Well, that's not what we need to see. Okay. All right. Any comments on what Bart said? Doesn't seem to work here. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you think about it, so much of this stuff doesn't make sense to us per se, because we didn't live in the ancient world. But when you did live in the ancient world, when you start thinking about that, those things would have been completely obvious to these people. I know when I was reading about 666, we all hear about that nowadays, and there's this, we all know of it through rock songs and stuff about the beast, but he doesn't say it's the number of the beast. He says it's the name of the number of the beast. And, to us, that makes absolutely no sense. What is the name of the number of the beast? But in ancient world, where they had an alphabet where the letters also were numbers, you could, when you would spell out somebody's name, it also gave you a number. And so when you hear 666 is the number of the beast, it's really the name of the beast, and it was Emperor Nero, and it spelled out Nero's name. So, we don't understand things like that because we didn't live in that time. But for these people living during the time Revelations was given, these things were a lot clearer. They weren't that unusual. They weren't that unique. The people would have understood what they were saying. Now to us today, it's very mysterious. But I think to them, it was much less so because they grew up expecting that, and they lived in more of a magical world where, you could be wiped off the face of the earth by an invading army at any time. We don't live that way now. But to them, anytime an army could show up and surround your city and kill you and make you all slaves. We don't live that way today, but they did. And so I think these things meant a lot more to them than they do to us. And it was certainly written for them and in a term they could understand, not to us here in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, it's what we call gematria, the numeric value, that every letter in Hebrew has a numeric value. And like you said, the name Nero Caesar, or Nero Kaiser, spelled in Hebrew, Nero Caesar, adds up to 666. Now, it says, curiously, some later Greek manuscripts of Revelation feature the number 616 instead of 666. And why is that? The number was adjusted to line up with the Latin spelling of Nero's name, Nero Caesar. This would not work with other proposed names that match the 666 and 616. So the identity who 606 stands for was known to some scribes who intentionally adjusted the number for symbolism to continue in Latin. So the scribes knew who 666 was, and they knew that it was the Emperor Nero. And I heard a lot of people say, oh, it will be this guy or this guy, but they always look in the future. They think it's somebody now who will be the 666. But they talked about that time, the first century. Now, who wrote the book of Revelation? It's remarkable that he actually writes his name, because in the first century, the Jews wrote anonymously. And I was surprised to learn about that, that, for instance, the gospel writers, a lot of scholars say that they're not their real names. They were added in the second century. And so we don't really know their names. Because in the church, they always taught me that they were apostles and they were witnesses. But when I started reading the Bible actually better, then I saw that couldn't be true. Like if you read Luke chapter 1, verse 2, he says he has the things of hearsay of somebody else. He wasn't there when it happened. So, but John, he names himself. Of course, that's about all we know about him. Some people thought, oh, it's the same John as in the Gospels, if that was his name. But that is highly improbable because, like in chapter 4, he sees the 12 patriarchs of Israel representing the original people of God and the 12 apostles of Jesus, and representing the new people of God. But he's not seeing himself. And also, it's probably written around 90, 95, or maybe even later. So if it would have been John, the son of Zebedee, the apostle, he would have been really old. But I also put down here is it's clear that John had studied the Old Testament, because he had a lot of verses, used a lot of verses in the book of Revelation. Well, I say the book of Revelation, but actually they're letters. So there are 7 letters. All right. Well, so John was on Patmos. It's a small island. Apparently the Romans put people there they had trouble with. And he wrote those letters to the 7 cities you can see there. And he knew those people, and he writes to each one of those people and gives them a message. And it's now, it was in Asia Minor. It's now in Turkey, in Anatolia, where we can find these old cities. And so they were writing for the people of that time, and not to us or to people who live 2,000 years later. And that's something that a lot of people don't seem to get. All right. Okay. Now, of course, we have all these strange things in the book of Revelation. And yeah, the seven heads and the seven mountains. We know that Rome was the city built on the seven hills. And one of the goddesses was Roma. That's where the name comes from. And they had a lot of temples in the different cities, temples that were for gods and goddesses, and also for emperors who were seen as gods. And that's why he also writes to, you could say, the members of the church at that time, or yeah, church actually means assembly. And he told them to be careful and not to fall again into the praying to other gods. And that's what we find a lot in the book of Revelation, that God seems to be a jealous God. He does not want them to pray to others. And the ones who do not follow him eventually will be destroyed. Okay, well, I have some others. Okay, I think this is an important thing to talk about also. The difference between Jesus of the Gospels and the Jesus in Revelation. Now, Jesus of the Gospels, we know somebody who is says, love your enemy, pray for those who persecute you, do not take up the sword lest you die by the sword, do not seek retaliation, give anyone who asks for your coat your shirt as well, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's, I think, the Christ we've learned in church and we've grown up with. But then the Jesus of Revelation seems to be totally different. There is no talk about love there. He favors only his devoted followers. All others are tormented and then horribly destroyed, including Christians. And all the catastrophes and the wars and the famine and everything are sent from heaven. So, and then Bart asked, what does it mean to be Christ-like? If Christ's wrath leads to destruction of nearly the entire humanity, should we really be imitators of Christ? And that's what Landon also talked about, that it's dangerous when people think they have to do what's in the Bible and take it in a way that it's dangerous for others. And that's the danger also from Revelation. You heard also in that clip that people expect Christ to come back, but certain things have to happen first. And some people are inclined to help to make that come true. Landon?
This to me was the really cool part of the book, because we all grow up, Jesus is this loving person. He's there he loves his children. And that's the Jesus that's taught. But when you juxtaposition that with what Revelation says, Jesus is coming to destroy everyone, to kill everyone. He's vengeful, he's hateful, he's out for revenge for everything, for being killed. It wasn't this loving atonement that he did. It was, he was killed, and now he's coming back to take blood from everybody who turned against him and doesn't follow him. And to me, when I was looking at this, I was going, wow, this is a completely different Jesus than the Jesus that we learned about in church, or that we still learn about today. And it's amazing to me when I hear people so excited, Jesus is coming back, and you go, do you know what Jesus is going to do when he comes back? He's going to destroy 99% of the people, even more than that. 99.95% of the people who live on the earth today are going to be destroyed in this horrible way. And you guys are excited about that? It just gives this whole Revelations thing it's not something to look forward to. It's a horrible event, and it's a vengeful and spiteful Jesus that's coming back.
Okay. Sean.
Yeah, I'm with Landon on this. This is probably my biggest takeaway from this book, was almost the schizophrenia, or the multiple personalities of the deity that we worship. And I think this is probably one of the biggest problems with Christianity in general, is you can pretty much pick and choose whatever manner of good or evil you want, and find some justification to it by saying, well, you're following Jesus. And it really just depends on, are you following the Jehovah of the Old Testament, the vengeful Jesus of Revelations, or the Jesus of the New Testament? And it's just so scattywampus and crazy out there that I just stopped being able to make heads or tails of Christianity in general.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Bruce?
Within Mormonism, if I remember right, when Christ came to the Americas, weren't a lot of people killed?
Yes.
And that is a juxtaposition, being crucified, the thieves on either side of him, and all that stuff. And then, Joseph Smith writes a narrative where there's mass destruction in the Americas. That's a really odd narrative, and it's hard to figure out what you believe. I don't believe in anything anymore, and stuff. And as I look back on it, I'm like, this is some crazy stuff.
Yes. It's something I always had a problem with too, is that, we say that the Jehovah of the Old Testament is also Christ. But when you see what the Jehovah of the Old Testament does, that's, often terrible too. I don't know. Have you had problems with that? Have you trying to explain how that works? Because we had that question a lot of times in our Sunday school and I've never been able to explain it. Rebecca?
There we go. I just think everybody assumes that they're going to be one of the ones that's okay. I've talked about people before that I know that fully believe, Jesus is coming out of a volcano, but he'll be okay. Everyone else around him that he knows will be okay. So it just kind of kicks the whole concept and issue down the road a little bit. We're going to be just fine. And you don't really think about the ramifications for the entire rest of the world. Like I was on social media arguing with somebody the other day. I said, this huge stock portfolio they have, this is not going to do any good in the apocalypse if it is what is described there, right? There will be no banking, nothing will be worth anything. And this person is like, well, how do you know that? I'm thinking, common sense if you read what's supposed to happen. So I don't know. I don't think people think it through. They just look forward to it without really comprehending it, because how could you? It's pretty horrific.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard a lot of people say, oh, I hope Jesus comes fast, because they expect to be the good ones.
Yep.
And that bad things in the world will stop because of his coming. And yeah, so now the millennium is something strange too, because Christ will come and then the millennium will start. Sean, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on what Rebecca said. Everyone assumes that they're going to be okay, but they also assume that everyone else is going to burn in hell.
Yeah.
And those are both probably poor assumptions to make.
I was going to say that almost seems like people aren't looking forward to Christ coming. They're looking forward to being vindicated. See, I was right. You guys all burned and I'm okay. And so it's not about Christ coming back. It's them being proven right.
Yes, and that's the kind of Christ you can find in the book of Revelation, unfortunately. The one who does the vengeance. So, yes, I think I prefer the Christ of the Gospels. And I have lost my faith, in a lot of things. And I'm open to things. But to me, the message of Jesus in the Gospels is the most important, to love thy neighbor. And I don't think we should be afraid what's in the book of Revelation, because it should have happened a long time ago, and it didn't. So I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't be scared. I don't think we're going to get burned. So it's a question of taking the good things out of the Bible. And you can take anything out of the Bible that you want. I think we've seen that. You can use it for ever what purpose. I always say, when people tell me the Bible is the word of God, I said, God did not write one word in the Bible. It's men who wrote the Bible and their interpretation of God. And, I hope there is a loving God and a loving Jesus. I don't know if that's the case, but I think he gave some good examples of what we can use in our lives, at least the Jesus of the Gospels, not the one of Revelation. So I don't know if you have any other comments on the book by Bart, or any questions? Mikhail?
Hi. Okay. So this idea, sorry, I'm just cooking right now because it's Canadian Thanksgiving. I'm in Canada. This idea of this teddy bear Jesus, that I don't know if you guys know about that. Like Greg from Quick Media likes to talk about it. And I wish that they understood what the ramifications are of trying to make Jesus look less kind, because I'm in a bunch of different LGBTQ LDS groups, and the effects that those kinds of words have on people is absolutely terrifying. There's a lady in the group whose sons are gay and they're married and they have kids that they've adopted, and they fly a pride flag on their street in front of their house, and it regularly gets demolished. All the time this happens to them. They've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. People kick down their fence, they take the flag, they destroy it, all in the name of the proclamation of the family, which apparently is the opposite of teddy bear Jesus. I guess Greg also uses the words like untethered compassion and stuff, but I just think it's really, really dangerous. That's all.
Thank you. Martine?
Actually, it's my husband, Stuart, who's sitting next to me, who has a comment he'd like to make.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm not a regular participant in this group, but
you should be. Hi, Stuart.
Hi. But I have read the book, and I do like Bart and what he writes and his podcast. And what struck me, I think, the most telling part was in the final chapter of the book. He contrasts the book of Revelation, the Apocalypse of John, with the Gospel of Jesus. And this has been mentioned, and I think Mark has said it, is that he contrasts, the book of Revelation and the violence and the utter destruction and just terrible things reported there with a story in the Gospel of Matthew, the parable of the sheep and the goats, which is in chapter 25 of Matthew. And if you read that, it's about the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left, and he compares them. And it isn't about what they believe or what they believe in Jesus. It's all about what they did, whether they loved their neighbor, whether they helped someone in need, and actually the goats say, well, we did all, we believed in you. We did this, we did that, we prayed in your name, we blah, blah, blah. But they didn't do the deeds they should have done, which was love their neighbor as themselves, basically, and serve other people. And that's the crux of the whole message of the gospel of Jesus. And so it's interesting that he makes that contrast and just how polar opposites those two notions are in this contrast between, the gospel as told in that specific chapter of Matthew and this book of Revelation. So I think that's it. And I think that, we've also talked about the world situation as it is today. There are political commentators who think with all that's going on at this moment in the Middle East and in Europe and in Russia, Ukraine, and in the Pacific with China and so on, that we are really, at this time, we're in the most dangerous moment the world has seen since the end of the Cold War. And that may well be true. But, we've been here before. We've lived through a great many dangerous moments in the history of the world. And we'll live through this one too. The world is not going to be destroyed. And I just don't understand it. And the other thing I was going to mention is that if you listen to any of the General Conference sermons, which I didn't, but if I did read something about what President Nelson said or somebody about, the idea in Mormon theology, and I don't think it's just unique to Mormon theology, but at the beginning of the millennium or just before the millennium begins, those living a telestial life, whatever that means, whatever the hell that means, they will be, quote unquote, removed. I mean, how that will happen, there's language in other scriptures and the doctrine comes and so on, that just, terrifying language about how that will happen. I think now, the general authorities don't use that language. They just say, they just use that term removed. And then during the millennium, just people who live celestial and terrestrial lives will be allowed to remain throughout the millennium. Even President Nelson has said that. It's just shocking when you think about that, that they really believe that kind of crap. It's just it's just mind blowing. But anyway, those are my thoughts. I really enjoyed the book, and it's great to be able to get together and discuss its significance with with like-minded people. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Bruce?
Yeah, I just had a thought. you know, Mormon hymns and music, I still like some of them. And when I describe it, like with my family, when we get together, I will do a sing along and we'll use some Mormon hymns, and they're going like, "You're not religious. Why?" And I go, "Well, this is the folk music of my culture." And one of the ones that I like is "Poor Wayfaring Man of Grief." I think it tells a really nice story that kind of embodies something that I kind of still believe, being kind to others without just trying to do it for your advantage. So yeah, the the Jesus, the Christ, the God of the different parts of the scriptures are so different. And, realistically, I don't believe any of it's accurate. And then that leaves me with kind of my reason for the book club is, how does the world work? What's my place in it? How do I, manage my life to be successful and kind, and I'm in the last quarter of my life. I want to live it well. Yeah, it's very interesting. So that was just my comment.
Okay, thank you. Jackie?
Yes. So my conundrum, and I feel this way with the book, which of course we see all the parallels with the political scene we're in, is I feel like I'm always with the group and we're preaching to the choir. And we all get it, we all see it, and our eyes are opened. But like in my circle of people, and I don't know a ton of people, but the true believing members in my work, family and friends, I couldn't share this book. And the frustrating thing for me, and I'd love to hear other people's comments, is how do you get the word out? I mean, this book is so scholarly. It covers, my favorite thing about the book is I don't think he left a stone unturned when it came to Revelation. I mean, he broke it down in so many different ways. And how do you get the word out? And that's where I get so frustrated is we all get it. We all know it. We're all nodding our heads. We're all woke, for that term has been so overused. But how do we bridge the gap? How do you get a book that is done this well? I mean, I just talked to a friend who's believing, but very nuanced, very common sense. And she ended, the conversation went with, "Jackie, I just think the politics are so crazy right now. Jesus is going to have to come." And so that's what I'm throwing out there. I don't know how to bridge the gap. Obviously, I'm not a good communicator. Nobody's listening to me because I get nowhere with the true believing side.
Yeah, well, that's very hard to do. Okay, thank you. And Ron?
As I was listening to the kind of retribution Jesus described in the book of Revelation, I was reminded of the movie UHF by Weird Al Yankovic, where they have a commercial for a movie called Gandhi 2. No more Mr. Passive Resistance. He's out to kick some butt. And so you got Gandhi with machine gun and beating up people in the streets and everything. And it just kind of reminded me a lot of what Jesus 2 would be like in Revelation.
Short.
But I was also thinking of the horrific stuff that happened in World War II, where millions of people are dying, nuclear bombs are going off, destruction everywhere. And that didn't get God's attention to bring back a second coming. So I don't know why people are so insistent that today things are so much worse than during World War II, and now this is what's actually going to bring them down. But those are some of my thoughts from the book.
Okay, thank you. Landon?
I was thinking what Jackie said, and to me, I'm sitting there. I've got grandkids, and they're growing up not in the church. They're growing up agnostic. Pretty much, my kids are all out. But as I read this, I started kind of thinking how important it is that I teach my grandchildren that they need to read the Bible, that they need to read Revelations, because they won't understand. You have to understand why the world is the way it is because they're reacting to these revelations, whether they're true or not. The world is trying to make them true, and you need to understand what is in there so that you can recognize when your leaders are trying to tell you something that no, that's just a fallacy or something that they've read in the Bible that they're trying to make happen, or that they're trying to support one side or the other. But at least they understand and can see it. And I can't help but think that I'd probably have to have them read the Book of Mormon as well, so they can understand Utah politics, because everything in Utah politics is based on what the Book of Mormon says. And so even though we don't agree with these things anymore, there's still a lot to be gained and a lot to be read and understood from them, because what's in these, whether it's true or not, the self-fulfilling part of it, you have to understand it so you can see when people are trying to make it become self-fulfilling, even when it's not happening.
Yeah, I learned my kids to critical thinking from when they were young, and they were out of the church before me. So, Ashley.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for having this. This is my first time coming to one of these, so it's been really exciting. So one of the things, and apologies, I showed up about 25 minutes late. So if this topic that I want to talk about came up, then apologies for the repetition. But I thought it was really interesting. I've read a couple of books that all sort of hover around this topic. And one of them talked about like climate change and sort of opening our eyes to things like climate change. And so I don't actually remember if this book talked about it, but I feel like one of the things that I encountered in Mormonism was sort of this spiritual bypassing when it came to climate change because of things like the second coming and just sort of, you would look at like natural disasters, and instead of thinking like, what maybe could we do, on like a governmental level to address these kinds of issues? And so many people, and I believed this way at one point myself. We just sort of thought like, no, this is a sign of the time. This is fine. This is good. We can't do anything about this because God is more powerful than we are. What could we possibly do to like affect climate change, or even should we want to? And I thought that was really interesting to sort of think about in conjunction with this, that if we sort of take that idea, I don't know, it sort of blew my mind to like realize that like this book wasn't written for our time. I also, was sort of in that sea of thought and belief, and like sort of waking up to that idea that like this isn't necessarily supposed to happen. I don't know. I don't have an ending point, just that I think these ideas are really interesting, and to sort of compare and contrast like my beliefs before and after.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and it does talk a little bit about climate change, and that some people, because they do believe in revelation, that they say, oh, well, let it happen, It's one of the signs of the times, and so Christ will come. All right, Bruce?
Yeah, my believing family is very much that mindset. You don't have to worry about pollution, environment, or climate change or anything because, the end of the world, well, it's going to be at least 10 years away. But right after that, right after the Mormons pull off the Olympics, you know, what's the point of doing any of this? And that's such a different mindset than I have now, that I'm going like, no, we've got to make better decisions. It's like with Israel. I support Israel and stuff, but there's got to be some, just rational, like what's going on, how to improve things there. And yeah, the evangelicals who support Israel, they may go too far, but then the Muslims and their belief system tends to go way too far too. I don't know the answers, but yeah, getting an understanding of how the world actually works is still my goal in life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Landon?
Yeah, I wanted to just respond to Ashley's comments because I always I tell Rebecca this story. When I was in the military, it was January in Georgia, and I was going through officer basic course, and they'd taken us out for a field exercise, and it poured rain the entire time we were out there, and it was like 40 degrees, pouring rain. We didn't have tents. We were soaking wet. We were sleeping in the mud. And, I'd grown up in Boy Scouts and stuff. And, when that kind of stuff happened in Boy Scouts, they came out and they got you and they took you home and they got you warm. And I remember sitting out there in the mud going, someone's coming to get me. They're going to come get me. And so all I was doing was trying to make it through until somebody came and got me. And after about 2 days, I realized nobody's coming to get me. I've got to make it through this until the end. And I had to completely change my mindset that no one was coming. And I think it's that same way when you realize that Revelations is something in the past. Nobody is coming to save the world. Nobody's coming to take care of it. We have to take care of it. We have to come up with the solutions. We have to figure out an answer to these problems. We can't just hold out for hoping that Jesus is going to come. It's time that we react and that we change and that we accept the fact that nobody's coming.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm the only one, probably not, but I have the impression that like when President Nelson speaks, that he changes some of the doctrine. He was talking about the different kingdoms, that when we go to the celestial kingdom, we get a celestial body. If we go to the celestial, we get a celestial body, terrestrial body. But in the Book of Mormon, it says that we will have a perfect body. And I have the impression that they are changing some of the doctrine. Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, again, that's a scare tactic, right? We never heard anything about that. Everyone is perfected. But now in the last conference, it was actually, was it 2 ago? I think it was part of the Think Celestial talk where exactly what you said, Mark. President Nelson resurrected this, no pun intended, strange doctrine from long, long, long ago with the idea that, those in a lesser kingdom are not going to have a gender. They're not going to have their genitalia. And so, of course, the joke that's called the TK smoothie, right? Celestial Kingdom smoothie or Terrestrial Kingdom smoothie, kind of joke about that. There are pictures of Ken dolls and Barbie dolls and things, but that's not funny. And that is not anything that any of us have learned. That's a very, very old kind of a doctrine. Why bring that up? Why threaten people with that? Why? Again, you're trying to keep control. So I've been watching to see if they're going to bring that up again, because a lot of us could not believe that those words came out of his mouth. Reinventing the next life as the members hang on their every word and make all of their decisions based on this, their life here and now decisions. Again, I'm going to use that word irresponsible and fear-mongering, I think.
Yeah, you wonder if President Nelson reads the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, I don't think any of them really read it. So. Yikes. No, I'm glad you brought that up, though. That's something.
Okay. Bruce?
Yeah. One of the things that has changed that I'm surprised is I think they've started using the narrative that when you get baptized, you agree to go on a mission. And just remembering that the last 2 first presidencies, including the current one, no one has ever gone on a mission. And
yes.
It's interesting. They're kind of like changing the game after you've played halfway through. And kind of makes me wonder. But then I'm out. I don't believe, and I'm watching. It's like, it's not my circus, not my monkeys, but it still is, because my whole family, I live in Southern California. I don't know anybody here that's Mormon. I don't have any Mormon thing going on, except this next Sunday we have an ex-Mormon gathering in a park near my house. So anybody's in Southern California.
That's why I'm grateful that I found this. I found Mormonish first, which I really like a lot. And then I'm now part of this book club. because I'm in Belgium and I'm alone because I used to be very active in the church, and I thought I had a lot of friends. But once they feel or they see that you don't believe the same things anymore, they sometimes they're even scared of me because, sometimes I say certain things to make them think, and they don't want that. So, yeah, that's yeah, you're actually, yeah, not part of the family anymore. And I actually stayed in the church because I felt like I was part of the family and I wanted to help my family members. But I don't have the impression that they want that. So, but yeah, I think yeah, we can stop here with the discussion.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me, and that I can be able, if people who understand what I'm going through and who I can understand what they are going through.
Yeah, that's what book club's all about. And thank you so much. Because again, Mark is a newer member and just stepped right up and said, I'll take that book. We're like, that is amazing. So, and this was just a wonderful job. Yeah, I love the videos and the things that you brought in, all the little extras and all the personal stories. Boy, that story of who was it that came to your ward 35 years ago? Packer?
Well, yeah, it was first Hinckley
Hinckley, that's right. And then,
who
yeah, that, I
made
mean, those,
yeah, and
yeah.
then it was Russell Ballard who said that we had
Yep.
failed.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's the thing. These stories shouldn't be lost, and we can all kind of learn from that. So, thank you. This has been absolutely wonderful. And our next book coming up in November, we'll go through a few final slides here, and then we'll move over to our mix and mingle where we turn the recording off. Is No Nonsense Spirituality, as I said. And Kendall, is he here or not here, Landon? I always mess up on who's here or who's not here. Who can not here?
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
he's here, but he sent a video.
He sent a video, a little preview for next time to get us all excited about that. So if Landon can get that playing, we'll watch that really quickly. Because this is, and I do think I will ask Britt if she can just pop on and say hi to all of us next time.
Hello, good book club. It's Kendall Christensen here to introduce your book for next month. It is No Nonsense Spirituality, All the Tools, No Belief Required by Britt Hartley. I've just started it. From what I've gathered, it's a navigation of a faith transition, especially dealing with nihilism. And she defines spirituality as connection. So just religion in general doesn't have a monopoly on that term. She wants to find ways to still have those things that bring connection with, greater and higher purpose into your life. And she says, with wisdom gleaned from the best of rationalism and the timeless insights of religion, I offer pathways to the good life that honor the complexity of the human experience. And one quote I've come across that I really like, those of you that know me know that I love gathering quotes. She says, quote, organized religion only has the tools for structure and skepticism the tools for tearing down. But the reality is we need both. Secular spirituality allows for a place of flow between order and chaos because it provides tools for the monsters of chaos and the tools for deconstructing when order becomes suffocating. So anyway, I really look forward to presenting this to you all next month and learning about this topic together. See you later. Bye.
All right, this will be great. Kendall is a really fun presenter, and this book is really good. And I do think I'll ask Britt if she has a second to pop in, or if she doesn't, maybe record a little message for us. So, because her book is awesome. Okay, couple of final slides as we end up here. Again, just reminding everybody, speaking of presenters, we need somebody for Being Mortal. So get a hold of me if that's something you would like to do. You can see how fun it is, what a great job Mark did, and it's really fun. So I'd like to remind you guys, especially those of you that are new, if you would like to revisit past book club meetings. We tape all these, which is really fun. We record them. So you can find it anywhere your audio podcasts are found. Or if you'd like to enjoy the slideshows that go along with it, an episode like what we did today, just simply search the Good Book Club for Post Mormons on YouTube, and you can go back through all of our old I call them episodes, they're meetings. But anyway, really, really good stuff with super smart people. I'm telling you, book club people, they're the best and the brightest, which is why we've all left and we're here. So, but anyway, the Good Book Club for Post-Mormons or the Good Book Club, wherever you find your regular audio podcast. And we have, gosh, we started recording at the beginning. Then there was a year or so where we didn't because some members, privacy issues. And then we decided, you know what, we're just going to go ahead. So we have quite a number of episodes if you guys want to look into those. So. All right. What else do we have real quick? Also, media on the radar on Facebook. We have the Good Media Club where we put things like, documentaries, series, movies that come out that have anything to do with Mormonism, just kind of throw them on there just to make people aware. So that's kind of fun if you want to go on Facebook and find that. Landon and I run Mormonish podcast, which has episodes every Tuesday and Friday. You can just find us on anywhere you find your audio podcast or also on YouTube. And, it kind of morphed out of the book club, this podcast, because we talked to so many interesting authors and people, and we wanted to have somewhere else to be able to dive in a little deeper. So Mormonish actually came out of the Good Book Club, which is really fun. So check that out if you haven't. And let's see, for those of you that are new, if you're just like kind of popping in and would like to kind of formally become a member, you can just find us on Facebook and join. And then we put all the links and information there. Or if you're not into social media, which don't blame you at all, you can send me an email to thegoodbookclub@mail.com. We'll put you on the email list and we'll send information about new books and links and things like that way. But please connect with us because you can see we're a great group and we have a whole lot of interesting discussions every second Sunday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. If you do send an email to the goodbookclub@mail.com, not Gmail, if we go to our next slide, it sometimes goes to spam. So double check because I'm always going to answer because I love it when people join the book club. So very, very fun. So, all right. Thank you, everybody from the Good Book Club. We'll say goodbye for now.